Welcome to episode 11 of the Speed Secrets podcast with today's guest, Adam Jabaay. This week we're talking about how to go club racing on the smallest budget possible, providing value to get people to help you, and something called Gridlife.
Welcome to the Speed Secrets podcast. Join Ross Bentley and guests, drivers, instructors and coaches, engineers, officials, and others for conversations about high performance and race driving. Listen for tips and advice, thought-provoking ideas, and inspiration to take your own driving to the next level. Green, green, green!
Hi everyone, welcome to the show. Today's guest is Adam Jabaay, and Adam, is that how I pronounce your last name?
Well, it depends. I've heard several Canadian people say that. That must be a way that people say that name in Canada. But yeah. We say Jabaay, you say Jabaay, whatever you want to say.
Okay. Well, there we go. Anyways, you're one of the hosts on the Slip Angle podcast, which I think is a very cool podcast that everybody should be listening to.
We appreciate that.
Yeah. And co-editor on tracktune.com. And
yeah, we do some stuff there too.
Yeah. Club racer, SCCA, NASA, Lemon stuff.
Yep. I've been pretty deep into this for an amateur for about since 2004 was when I heavily got into track stuff. But I started racing about 7 years ago. So wheel-to-wheel stuff about 7 years ago.
So how did that happen? What?
I was really pretty heavy into I'd gotten into kind of work my way through the track day ranks. We were hosting some of our own events. I was working with a lot of the local groups in the Michigan, Indiana, Chicago area. Started instructing with Integra Type R Expo, which is kind of a sister event to our Honda Meet Gridlife events, and I kind of liked instructing back then. I could handle it. Now I can't really drive and instruct at the same time because I kind of have to take Dramamine in order to stay happy in the passenger seat. But so I try to do one or the other. But I had gotten deep into instructing. I was going all over the country instructing, VIR, Carolina Motorsports Park, kind of following some of the events where friends of mine went. And it kind of just seemed like the natural progression because in 2007, we built a car for the Grassroots Motorsports $2007 challenge. That's the challenge that the magazine does. Basically, you have whatever year it is. That's how much money you can spend on the car.
That's cool.
All fully documented. You got to have receipts and everything. We built a CRX, which I'm kind of deep into the 88 to 91 Hondas. Always have been. My buddy Luke Wilcox and I built, and our whole group of buddies, the 075 buddies, we built a CRX. We did okay. We got a feature in the magazine that year, and then we went back the next year with the same car. We repainted it, changed the turbo setup. It had a Integra LS motor. It was set up pretty well for the autocross. We always were top three those first 2 years, and then the third year I think we were second place in the autocross. We won the show, and we were like fifth or sixth in the drag race. It ran like a low 11 second quarter mile.
Wow.
And we won that year by like a huge margin. We had repainted it. The car was perfect. We painted it again. And bought and sold. And that kind of got me into the low budget wheel-to-wheel. But a good friend of ours had become part of that team, Tom Lamb. And he's an older guy. We were in our 20s. He was in his 50s. So at the time we thought, it's Tom. Tom likes hanging out with us. That's cool. Who cares if Tom's in his 50s? But Tom raced SCCA, and he still does. He's a good buddy of mine still. And so on the ride down to Florida the first year, we were talking about wheel to wheel forever. And then I went to one of his races, I think, and then I went to a customer of mine's race up at Gingerman Raceway, just to kind of see what the wheel to wheel thing was. And then Lee Grimes from Coney, who's a good friend of Tom, donated an old ITC CRX to us. And said, all you got to do is give me a spot on the team for a couple races. You can have the car. And we built it into a Lemons car. And that's how I got into wheel-to-wheel. So,
And you mentioned Gridlife, and I want to talk to you about that. But when we kind of started talking about you being on the show here, you said that you've raced SCCA with probably the smallest budget of anybody in the past 15 years. And
I can't think of anybody that's ran cheaper.
Yeah, well, okay. So, that's a pretty cool claim to have. And, I'm not expecting you to, well, actually, would you share your bank statements and your credit card numbers so I can check that out just to prove the point?
I can, but only person. You can't share it on your website. So.
Okay. But, well, just tell me the numbers now. And yeah.
I would guess. My car as it sits right now, and it's a pretty good STL car now. It started out as an ITA car. I bought it. By the time I bought it, I bought it with a huge trailer load of parts. It was kind of a heap. It wasn't all that great. I've went through every system on the car completely. But everybody always says it's cheaper to buy a built race car than to build your own. I can build my own entirely, and I'm just about to start building a new car, but I've got all the parts collected. But I don't know. I think I could build it cheaper than I could have if I bought for the quality of car. But so it doesn't always ring true. But I'm rambling here. But the car at my first race, I was into the car with cast off tires for about $2,500. And it was pretty good. I was mid pack. My first race was at Mid Ohio. I discovered that the front end was falling off the car, so I had to take it apart and re-weld it. So that wasn't awesome, but it had been a race car since 95, 96. But currently I'm probably into the car, with buying and selling. You find a good deal, you buy it. You don't need that part, you sell it for a slight profit. I don't call that like my job. That is kind of work. But with buying and selling, I'm probably into the car right now for about 4, maybe 5, but not including wheels and tires and stuff like that and consumables. But just try to find good deals and work. And really, my cost of the weekend is the entry fee. I've got trucks and trailers at work. My dad and I own a construction business. That's my real day job. I have several other jobs, but so I don't need to pay for that. So that's pretty low budget. But entry fees are really all entry fees and food. And we take food and we grill and we have a good time at the track. So. I'm probably not pointy end unless I'm at a small regional race. I'm usually trying out some weird engine combo that I cobbled together. But that's part of the fun of it for me is building the cars. And I do everything myself. I'm going to build the cage in my next car. I've built several cages for friends of mine in order to get them on track. I encouraged a buddy of mine, Brad Adams, who now races Honda Challenge H2. We were traveling to VIR to instruct for the NS Expo, I think in 2013. And he was kind of one of the fast DE guys in our local area. And I said, you ought to just come wheel to wheel. I'd done it, I'd raced SCCA half a dozen weekends. And I said, you should just do it. And he's like, I can't afford to get my car caged. And I said, I got a bender. Let's cage the car. And got him, deep into wheel to wheel now. He's real deep into it. He just won a regional championship this year, I think. But won a bunch of races, doing well. He loves doing it, and it's all he talks about. But trying to build a good group of friends around here into the wheel to wheel crowd also. But I've got a huge group of track day buddies, like hundreds and hundreds, especially with our events that we run. So it's a really fun scene up here in the Midwest.
So it sounds like the way to go racing on a small budget is you need to be able to do everything yourself, and you need to have some equipment along the way to do that, right? So to be fair,
it helps.
Yeah, yeah. So I was going to ask you. How do you do that? How do you race on the smallest budget ever?
Yeah, the smallest budget would be weekend to weekend. I would say I've got a lot of money and tools. Hand-me-downs from Grandpa, hand-me-downs from Dad. My brother and I share a lot of tools. Friends of mine, we share tools. I got my JD2 pipe bender in exchange for doing the welding on a cage in Tom Lamb, my buddy I just talked about, in his STL CRX race car. He dropped out. He had 2 benders. He left one of them at my house. Just a lot of bartering. A lot of bartering happens in my garage. So, but forging relationships with all these people. You build up a really good group of people around you, and you can get anything done. I've got a good guy, a guy that does. He does heads for me, and he's awesome, and he's just really, really reasonable. you refer enough people to the local machine shop, and pretty soon you get a pretty good price. But just being in the community in the Midwest for as long as I have, and getting to, if you're happy and smiling and talkative, people gravitate towards you. And then pretty soon you have too many friends to remember their names, and then pretty soon you know somebody who does everything. Yeah. So if I can't do it, I got a buddy who can do it. So that's a good way to. I think it's a good way to be in the paddock, and that's kind of what we try to make our podcast kind of like what you do in the paddock at night. You sit around and BS. We just kind of record it, right. and I don't know. It's always the track is the place I like to be. I might as well have friends there and hang out with them as much as I can. So,
what's interesting is you were saying that. I mean, like I'm sitting here thinking, it's really no different than pro racing.
Which I have no concept of pro racing except for my buddy Tom O'Gorman, who races PWC.
Right.
But
it's all about the community around you, and you're talking about one way to save on your budget is to send business to somebody else. Well, is that any different than big time sponsorship?
No, that's true.
It's the exact same thing. I mean, you provide value to somebody provides value back to you, and you're talking about bartering and everything else. I mean, really, that's no different than going to a company and saying, I've got this really cool marketing program, and give me some money for it.
With working with the Gridlife series, I went to college for psychology and business, and psychology was the only thing that interested me. And I think that's helped me be kind of a people person. I'm a little bit too much of a people pleaser, but the Gridlife business has kind of helped me learn that's the side of business that really is applicable to a lot of racers nowadays. Content creation, and really forming partnerships is kind of what the Gridlife business is going to end up being if we take it long term. And the same thing with small, even small DE guys. If you got a good group of friends, and nowadays if you have a Instagram following or whatever, or some outlet to talk to a lot of people, people give you things at cost or better. But you have to prove the value. You have to be an asset. You can't just be a beggar. The shop that I refer a lot of people to, they do great work, and RC Auto Works in Bridgeview, Illinois. They do good work.
Well done.
And they give me great deals on parts. And they're hopefully going to be helping us out with the Gridlife series too this year, being one of our tech shops and stuff like that. So, if you can provide value to people, that's a big thing. That's what makes the racing world go round, I imagine. So.
And fortunately, we're dealing with a bunch of people that are. The addiction is just as bad as it is with us. So if we can feed their addiction, they're more than willing to feed ours, right?
Yeah. You gotta scratch everybody's back. So.
Yeah. I mean, the cool thing about this sport too is, it doesn't matter where you go. People are just passionate about what they do, right? And it's just so cool. And
the ones that stick around for a long time, they're typically the people you want to hang out with anyway. There's a few people in every event that they're not the ones you want to hang out with, and you can tell. And a lot of times they're not the ones that stick with the hobby either. It's a hard hobby to do. And be married and have a family and a stressful job and work a lot of hours. It's a tough hobby to do when you're doing it at the small level like I do. But you got to put the time in, and that extends to all the facets of the things that I do with the show and with our website and writing articles for other magazines and stuff. This is what I want to do, and I don't even care if I'm getting paid for it. I want to do it. Cars are fun, and if it's not fun, don't do it. So,
I think that's one of the prerequisites, isn't it? I don't care if I don't get paid, because you're not going to get paid for a big chunk of what you do. Yeah, for a long time. You reminded me of a number of years ago. I got hired to coach a motorcycle drag racer, and I went to this all Harley drag racing meet. And
I didn't even know Harley drag racing was a thing.
It's a very cool thing, and serious.
People race everything, though. I shouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. So I'm coaching this guy that does, he does the quarter mile in 5 something seconds and 230 miles an hour. And, I'm wandering around and I'm looking at the crowd, and it's pretty entertaining to see different crowds, right? And at one point I make this comment, and, maybe this is not politically correct, but I'll say it anyways. And I kind of went, man, I've never seen so much leather, tattoos, and mustaches in my life. And you should see the men. I'm looking at these big Harley guys, and, I'm kind of standing there, and these guys, they come over and they start talking to me about what I'm doing. And they are the coolest people. They're just enthusiastic about their form of motorsport. So, that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. I have an uncle who's raced competitive motocross for 25 years. He's, probably 50 now. And he's kind of like, every time we get together for a holiday or whatever, I have no interest in motocross at all. But we could talk, we just talk about, it's the same disease, just a different symptom. You can go on for hours and hours. So,
yeah. So going back to going racing on a small budget, and, I think one of the coolest things that's happened in the last, I guess it's been a decade, is, this whole low budget endurance racing, from Lemons to Chump Car to World Racing League to AER to all that kind of stuff. I think it's fantastic. It's just made it so much easier for people to get involved in. The downside, I think, is a lot of people go, well, let's just throw a car together and go out there. And I've seen a couple of cars that I don't think should be on a track. It's that knowing where to save money. But, when it comes to some safety things, maybe not so. And I guess, how's somebody supposed to know?
Yeah, we started racing Lemons. I don't remember what year it was, but it was probably 6-7 years ago. And they were pretty stringent about the cages. They had a pretty good tech inspector at all of our events, but there were stories about, the one event where they let this other car pass, and there was a couple of cages that I wouldn't let. Nowadays, I wouldn't even let onto our HPDE or Time Attack series. But that all changed more and more every year. In their rule book, the cages and everything are defined basically identically to NASA SCCA. So it's all pretty similar and should be. Little bit looser as far as fuel cells, they don't need to be covered, but they require FIA, SFI, and the non-FIA, SFI need to have a full steel box over them. So it's similar, but overall, I think the build quality on most of them, 99% of them when we were racing, was pretty good. And I guess it's way better now even. We haven't raced Lemons in probably 3 years, but I intend to get back out there someday. I would like to do Chump. I've never done Chump before. My partner Austin was at my podcast partner Austin was at a race with you at Road-Atlanta, right?
Road-Atlanta, yeah. So I went and did a Chump Car race there, had a blast doing that, and Austin showed up and hung out for a while. And I've done some of the World Racing League, which is kind of I'd say a step up from that. But still, from a cost perspective, pretty
similar.
So yeah.
When you spread the cost out between 4 or 5 guys, it's another pretty reasonable way to go racing.
Right.
I think some of the problem lies in when you're building the cars, it's not really any cheaper than putting together a lower level SCCA or NASA car. And for me, part of the reason that I got attracted to sprint racing was I was always pretty competitive, but I would never want to burn the car down until everybody had driven it in our Lemons team. So I would really never push too hard. I would always shoot for, to run on pace with anybody. And many of our races, I had one of the fastest laps or the fastest lap because I raced near the end and I could really work on it. But the biggest benefit, I think, from starting out with Lemons racing was the insane amount of disparity in speed between a lot of these cars. It really heightened my situational awareness. And when I got to SCCA, it was like, oh my gosh, some of these guys are people that have been racing for many years. they don't know I'm there, and that dude would have hit me, or this guy would have he was chopping me off, and I backed off just the right time, or I moved into the grass just the right time. My car would probably, if I had just gone to a comp school and got my license, my car probably wouldn't be in nearly as nice a shape right now. I can think of 6 or 7 incidents in the last 5 years that I avoided because the left side of my eye or the right side of my eye was so trained, because Lemons really punishes car-to-car contact. Like they make you weld things to your car, or get out and do a dance, or park it for half an hour, or. But we were always hyper sensitive to keeping the racing super clean. And I think it's a really good training ground especially when you have like 118 cars on a small track like Gingerman or Audubon South, in the snow, in the flurries. And you don't want any of them to touch you on the start. The drawback for me, I think, is I'm a little bit too cautious on the start of sprint races. I don't always go for every gap, because I can't afford to rebuild my car. So I don't I'm always upper mid pack, but really the fun for me is going to the event, sprint race weekend or whatever it be, and paddocking with my friends, getting out there. The rush of wheel to wheel is the only place that I can think only of one thing. My brain isn't thinking about the 3 different jobs that I'm doing. Busy life. I'm not thinking about bills, mortgage payment, the repair I have to do on my work truck, any of it all goes away. It's the cleanest mental place that I can get to, and it's the place I would love to do every weekend, and someday hopefully I will. But
yeah, I mean, it's the most relaxing place in the world, isn't it?
The chaos of racing, it's the only thing.
Yeah. And it's obviously it's a big part of why we do what we do, right? We get up there and nothing else matters in the world, and it's fantastic. Yeah.
If it was boring, it would be a lot cheaper, I think.
Yeah, that is true. Think of all the money that we could save. Yeah. Actually, I mean, from the people that you race with, and all the different kind of racing, where are some of the places that you've seen people just waste money? I mean, obviously there's some people have reasons for spending their money, but is there some big blatant ones you're going, man, that is just an absolute waste?
There's a few things. I think getting into the sport way above your head, and not having even the talent to drive around, building a $50,000 car and paying a team to come out and support it, and really, and almost crashing into me your first race, with way more power than I've got, and I put 12 seconds a lap on you. I think you got to start out in the right spot, and you really, this has happened. I mean, I've seen that a bunch of times. But obviously some people don't, they don't want to do anything else, but I would say build something safe, and getting out there, building something safe that you can work on for the most part, that all the systems on, to some degree. That's the place to start. And I've seen a lot of people just get completely burned out even in the few years I've raced. They get so burned out because they're spending so much money on brand new tires. They got to have everything, and they're still not within 5-6 seconds of where they want to be. And if I'm 2 seconds off, I got a lot of excuses, and they don't have any excuses when they're 2 seconds off. I'm on the cast-off tires. I got the smallest engine in the class with the lowest horsepower, even though I am the lowest weight typically. But I think you really need to make the hobby fit your life before you make your life fit the hobby. Personally,
I got to write that down. That's good. Yeah.
You can get burned out super fast. I mean, I'm sure going through pro racing and everything, there were probably many nights where you thought, what am I doing with my life? It's a hard hobby. You got to make it fit your life.
Yeah. It is, any sane person wouldn't bother doing this. But at the same, the flip side of that is, man, we have more fun than anybody else in the world, I think. So
yeah, I can't disagree with you there.
You reminded me of a good friend always says, race if you're going to go racing, race where you can have the biggest budget. Yeah. So
That's a really good. That's a really good suggestion. I'm not doing that.
If you've got $100,000, go dominate something. Club racing. If you've got $1,000, maybe dominate slot car racing. I don't know.
Or like the local circle track 4-cylinder races. You could be the king of town there.
Exactly. But kind of look at how much money can you spend, and then go, what could I absolutely dominate with this? And I think that's a pretty. I mean, depending on why. Again, I mean, you bring up the good point. I think of, sometimes we go to the track just because we love hanging out with our buddies, right? And you don't need to win to do that. But if winning is somewhat important to you.
Obviously there's many people, especially probably many of your guests that in the future and in the past that would think, oh, well, what's he doing? Why is he out there just screwing around? I don't think I'm screwing around. I think a lot of it is it's more of a personal challenge just to, work 60 hours a week and just to get there. That's almost a bigger hurdle than the guy whose car was ready 2 weeks ahead of time, sitting in the enclosed trailer, and they're ready to go. But for me, just making the hobby happen is what it really. That's half of the battle, or 2/3 of the battle. And my stuff doesn't break either. Like, I go through every system on the car, every race. The car is pretty solid, and the next car I think is going to be even better. But what you said with being the guy with the biggest budget in your race series, I think that my buddy I talked about earlier, whose car I caged and got him racing, Brad Adams, he said to me the other day, he said, "Why are you worrying about runoffs? Like, I'm looking at the Indy runoffs next year or this year for SCCA, and I'm looking at my schedule, and I got 10 weekends, or whatever that we're organizing events at. And so I have to do 3 majors races and Indy for, a week, which, not too far away. So that's not too hard. But he said, why are you even worrying about that? You're going to stress yourself out too much. Just go dominate at regionals at Gingerman. And you've got more laps there than anybody. Go race NASA at Audubon. You've ran that track a million times. And I thought, yeah, maybe I do need to just win some stuff and go have some fun again. I mean, there is something to, playing in the sandbox that you should play in, I guess,
Yeah. Well, and I think you bring it, it's just, brings it back to, hey, why do we do this? It's for the fun. And if you're totally stressed out trying to get to too many events, then do too much, then Speaking of which, Gridlife, so,
geez, where do we start there?
And Adam, I know, on Slip Angle podcast, you guys go on for like 4 hours at a time.
We don't talk about it too much, but we did just have the main founder. I guess he called me a co-founder, but I guess I am kind of the co-founder of the trackside. But Chris Stewart, we just had him on the show. But
but I'm trying to keep my podcast a little bit shorter than yours, but
we go on sometimes.
And by the way, it's all great stuff, but
I don't know if it's all great stuff. Some of it's great stuff.
Well, actually, okay, so there's some of it that's good. Okay, yeah. But Gridlife, up until I don't know, a little over a year ago when Austin first talked to me about it, I was like, I'd never heard of it.
You're a long ways away, and you're in different circles. Yep.
Yeah, I think that's mostly it's a slightly different community. But I went and did that instructor training thing with you guys last year, and I saw some of the stuff you were doing at Gingerman, and I was like, wow, this is like a whole cool different world. What's your short explanation? What is Gridlife?
Basically, Gridlife is an event series. We do multiple different kinds of events. We started out doing our event, West Michigan Honda Meet. That was just what we did every year from 01 up. We would rent Gingerman Raceway in 04 up. We rented the track, and we kind of figured out how to host track events. They became pretty popular. They became weekend events then, and I think one of them sold out in 19 minutes. And we thought, we got to do more events, just because we want to hang out with our buddies more. We had a really, really good, we still do, we have a really good community in Chicago, Indiana, Michigan area, a lot of people want to come to our events. We would get 1,000 people walking through the gates, 1,500 people walking through the gates at a track day weekend, just to kind of hang out and be there. so it was a really good community. Chris came up with this idea. He had been getting into music promotion and kind of helping some bands out locally in Chicago. And he was friends with car show guys, friends with drift guys. And he thought, why don't we just get everybody together and throw a big party at a racetrack? And so some of the hardcore track guys nowadays kind of think it's this big party, vape fest, flat bill Subarus on the ground scraping the paddock, But really, it's all based around driving because Chris is a wheel-to-wheel guy, Lemon's racer with me. He's done track days as long as I have, maybe even a year longer. And our core staff is all, they're all racers, time attack guys, time trial guys, HPDE people, so we just throw a big party at Gingerman Raceway. We did a second festival last year. We went down to Road Atlanta. Our event series this year, we have a bunch of track battle events, which are basically track days with a pretty professional-ish time attack. We're trying to really build up the time attack, the track battle series. We have five events in the track battle series next year. Both festivals are one of the events. And then we do a bunch of track days also, just, focusing heavily on driver development. We have a really good curriculum that, we've helped, you helped build some of that stuff. And we're going to be moving into an intermediate and advanced level driver development stuff this year, and also doing some data seminars to really, really build our track day crowd into like a fast, safe, fundamentally trained, solid track day crowd. So it was fun 10 years ago when I was like the fastest guy in our track event series, but now we are filled with fast guys and fast girls. So it's really fun building up a safe, fast community. And really, Gridlife is kind of just, it's just one of the things that we do. It's becoming its own business, especially from partnerships with bigger companies. And we brought drift into the mix. Pro drifters generate really cool videos, so people like those.
Right.
And trying to build an event series is a lot of work. So that's every day it's a lot of emails, conference calls during my regular job. It's just kind of, we're trying to build up the scene. You bring all those people to a racetrack, and that racetrack's going to do better in the years to come. Because when people see racings and track days and time attack, they say, I kind of want to do that. And we get a lot of people at the racetrack that have, heard about us through, social media. They didn't know anything about track days. And I had one beginner in Atlanta. I was cruising up and down. That's one giant. We were in the pro paddock, one giant long pit lane. I was cruising up there. It's just talking to people, making sure everybody's good to go. They were doing a little bit of cleanup from drift, and the beginners going out. And two different beginners pulled me aside and said, hey, you're Adam, right? And yeah, what's up, man? How you doing? And one of them said, I'm here because of your stupid podcast. And I said, that's awesome, man. He said, I never thought about doing track days, but I listen to lots of podcasts. I drive around for work all day. And so he came out. Making racetracks busy is a thing that we need to happen in order to make racetracks exist in like 25 years. So we're throwing track events and we're throwing good parties, and it's fun. Pro level music and car shows and.
Yeah, I got to tell you. So I for years I've done a lot of stuff with, the car clubs, and the big three are Audi, BMW, and Porsche clubs, and one of the things I keep hearing over and over and over again is, we can't get younger drivers to come into the sport.
Sure
and
you can.
The younger generation just doesn't get involved with this. And, I go to this Gridlife event thing that I helped you with, the instructor thing last year. I'm looking around going, well, this is where everybody is. They're all here. So
they're out there.
You're right.
They're
I think, maybe it's just a little change or tweak of some things, or start going more Gridlife events.
We really try to bring, and it even starts in like the tech shed. I don't let anybody help at Tech Inspect if they aren't like happy, smiley, let's be buddies kind of dudes or gals even, we don't want, my first track event, I pulled into the tech shed and it was a VW event, and they weren't very nice to me. I had just a basic street Honda. Everything was safe. It was really standoffish, kind of mean. that event series is gone, but I don't ever want to be that. Like, we get a lot of younger kids. Like, we have so many 18 and 19-year-olds come through our beginner program every year, and 21-year-olds, 20-year-olds, and they save up. This is the one time they're going to be on track this year because it's all the money they have extra. I want that to be an awesome experience for them. So it's, we really we even try to be silly on the PA. It's really, if you build a fun event, people come back. And we're trying to bring in a wheel-to-wheel component in the next couple of years also. So we want to show people wheel-to-wheel at the Gridlife events, because it's fun to watch with good announcing. If you've got good tight battles, there's nothing better than like a Spec Miata race. If we can bring that in front of, say 5,000 to 10,000 people at the Atlanta Festival, that's the goal. That you get people wanting to do wheel to wheel when they see good wheel to wheel. So building the sport starts with the kids in the parking lot at the Best Buy who are getting chased out by the cops, and there's their camber is crazy and their exhaust tips go up at weird angles. Like, those kids are they're prime track ready people. they just
as long as you don't have an attitude against them, right?
Yeah, they need the right pill. I don't love those cars. They're not my thing. I don't really care about car shows, but we bring our track cars to some of the local car shows just to make friends. You can hate on all the cars at the Stance show or whatever. All you can hate those cars if you're a track guy, and it's really easy to because they're not all that functional. In the form that we want them to function in, but those dudes love cars. So let's bring the groups together and throw a car show at a track event.
Right.
We've had a pretty good amount of people say, "Hey, I want to do that." In the last few years, and we have over 90% return rate on drivers too. If you build a fun event, people will come back, and that's how people get into the sport. We've had a lot of people graduate from our stuff onto, and they still come back and instruct or hang out, but go on to NASA, SCCA, WRL. We're actually partnering with WRL on May 5 at Road America. We're going to be doing track day before WRL. They're going to be doing licensing ride-along rides. We're partnering with another organization in Atlanta. Hopefully that's not finalized yet, but it's a big one, the big one maybe. So I don't know, if we bring everybody together, the hobby isn't, it doesn't have to be about competing groups. The cool kids don't need to hate the other kids. I think everybody's into cars. So
yeah. So to kind of wrap this up, I mean, what I've heard is community providing kind of value to people, and they'll help you back, and hanging out with your friends and having fun and focusing on that part of it. And there's no reason why we can't have, you had how many people at the Gridlife at Road Atlanta?
Road Atlanta was our first year at Road Atlanta, and I don't actually remember. It's probably, I think we had like 5,000 come through the gate, something like that. That wasn't all that big because it was our first year and it was a hot weekend. But we had more people than that come to our Gingerman Festival last year. And at Gingerman, you've been there. It's not a big place.
Right.
It was like standing room only.
Yeah.
But we're hoping to double Road Atlanta because every year our Gingerman Festival has doubled. So yeah, it might be pretty busy next year. So it seemed pretty busy last year, but that's a big place.
You're sitting here going, well, that wasn't that big, but do you know how many people listening to this podcast are going, are you kidding me? Like, I go to a SCCA race and, there's like 13 people there. And,
it is really fun being on track. I did one session in my race car. I don't even know why I brought it. 2 sessions in my race car. I don't even know why I brought it to the Midwest Festival last year at Gingerman, but because I'm the guy in charge of all the stuff on track. Like it's busy, especially when you've got 400 cars taking the track throughout the weekend. But I got one session in with another STL racer buddy of mine, Eric Cattell, who just got second place at runoffs this year, or last year, but it was his first year too. The rookie's fast, but wow. He helped me get my car ready and just said, "Let's go out. I don't even, I'm just gonna, we'll have a wheel-to-wheel session in the advanced DE." And so I told the flagger, I said, if he passes me at the lead, don't black flag us. We'll stay away from everybody. It'll be fine. And doing like, light duty wheel to wheel in front of, there was probably 2,000 to 3,000 people lining turn 1, 2, and 3 at Gingerman, and down thousands of people. I mean, there's no better feeling than that. I don't know how awesome it must have been to race, Indy cars and stuff, but man, it was exhilarating. So seeing the crowd around the whole track, it's a blast. It's just fun to have people at the racetrack. So.
Unfortunately, I think there's been some IndyCar races recently that's probably had smaller crowds than you guys have had at your Gridlife events. So.
Well, maybe they need to be a support series for Gridlife.
Exactly, IndyCar support for Gridlife. There we go. Okay.
Well, we would actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. We'd love to have them. They're cordially invited.
Yeah. Well, Adam, I want to wrap this up. I'm going to put some stuff in the show notes, the links to the stuff we've talked about, but obviously to Gridlife and anything else, any other links we should be putting in there?
No, we got tracktunes.com is the home for our Slip Angle podcast, and then grid.life is the main website for Gridlife. Yeah. And then, no, that's about it. So.
Okay. Well, thank you. This has been a blast just talking about this, and I bet there's a whole pile of listeners that are going, Gridlife, I didn't know it existed, and man, I got to go and check that out. So maybe you're going to double the amount of people you had at your events.
Oh, I would love that. That'd be great.
Well, or let's say,
and we'd love to hit.
Yeah, double the number of listeners on my podcast. It should be at least 14 or 15 people. So, anyways,
oh man, I've been binge listening the last. I listened the first day that I found it. I binge listened them, and then I really enjoyed the one that I heard today with Peter from Peter Krause from.
Yeah,
I sat in one of his classrooms at an event at VIR one time, and man, that dude is smart. You guys were very good together today. So it was an enjoyable day for me today.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Adam, and we'll be in touch and keep having fun, and I'll be listening to Slip Angle some more too.
And I'm sure I'm the slowest guy that will probably ever be on your show, but I appreciate the invite.
I doubt it, but yeah, keep having fun and keep racing for small dollars, for small budgets.
It's the only way that I can turn my mediocre budget into a smaller budget is to spend it on entry fees.
Yeah, so, there you go. Yeah,
I appreciate the invite, man. I hope the show is a booming success. It's been super fun to listen to and fun to talk to you.
Great, thanks, Adam. Bye.
All right.
Here's this week's speed secret. No matter what type or level of motorsport you participate in, you are a team builder. Admit it, motorsport, all forms, types, and levels of it, it's a tough sport. But the more people you have around you who you can count on for help, the easier it gets. And to do that, you want to build a team around you. This could be your family, your friends, suppliers, people you do business with, and others at the track. Think about how you can build the team of people around you. Inspire them, motivate them, just like you would in any other team environment. It was a blast to talk to Adam today, and I hope you enjoyed it and got something out of it. If so, subscribe to the podcast and share it with friends. Hey, it's all about building our team and our community. Recently, I've been posting some what I'll call short stories on my driving tips blog on my website at speedsecrets.com. They're fun, and when you read between the lines, I think you'll find some valuable lessons. I hope you check them out too. Keep learning and having fun.